you muddle the landscape and you don't provide enough selection pressure to force people to find that product market fit, like to bring in real money from customers and to bring in real money from people who are spending their own money, investors. So that's kind of the balance.
You make an interesting point, which sort of answers my next question. How do startups view risk, or are startups more open to taking risks in Brazil or Taiwan as compared to Silicon Valley startups, in your observation?
Yeah, I mean, in the past, like 2-3 years, we bring lots of startups coming over here, and I think the definition of risk is probably differ from different locations, especially in Taiwan. Probably the risk is like you shouldn't do anything wrong in order to keep yourself in certain status. But in Silicon Valley, probably the risk is if you do nothing, that's the biggest risk. Yeah, the hesitations and afraid to define the questions and afraid to talk to your competitors. That might be a big problem in the beginning, especially if you spend weeks, months, and over a year here, and people see there's nothing changed in your startup, and that's very dangerous. And luckily, we do have a lot of startups. They change their business model, change their thinking, but keep their core value. I think this is the most important things we've seen.
Yeah. Well, I believe startups in Brazil, they tend to be more conservative in terms of risk-taking, because the VCs there, they just invest in startups who are generating revenue, who kind of are becoming profitable. And here in the US, you guys are more worried about the scaling, right? Startup have to scale, and it doesn't matter if they just burning cash, but that in Brazil, it's a big risk, so they tend to be more focused on generating revenue sooner, the sooner the better. So the risk-taking here it's huger than in the countries like Brazil and third world countries, where the challenges are different and the ecosystems are different.
Yeah, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think this is actually one of my biggest pet peeves. I mean, again, and this is maybe because I've been contaminated by all these lovely investors around me. They're not interested in being a bank. They're not interested in just getting interest on their money. So investors are taking a huge amount of risk, and because of that, they need the valuation of the company to go up. The only thing that's going to make that valuation go up is if the company grows. So I think you're right. I see a lot of solid companies that are, there's this, it's kind of an ugly term, but there's a lot of these lifestyle businesses, if you will. They're nice, they're good, solid companies, but they're not looking to become very big. They're just looking to become cash flow positive and generate nice returns for the people who put up the money, and hopefully quickly. That's okay if you're a bank, because you want to get paid back, you want to generate assets, and you want to get dividends or interest on the money you put in. If you're a venture capitalist, you're looking for an exit, you're looking for a multiplier, and that multiplier means you want to get, not just 20% more than you put in. You want to get, 300% or 10x or something like that. And to get there, you got to grow. So if you generate a lovely business that has, maybe it does really well and it makes a few $1 million a year, that's nice, because you can pay everybody a nice salary and you can have a good business and a good life. And you create jobs, which is a big priority for many of the agencies that invest in these companies, but they're not leading to that growth to generate something really big and to generate that exit for the investors. And that's why I think it's important for a lot of these programs that stimulate these to also be financial investors, to look for a return on the money they put in, and not just look for, I want to create jobs and I want to reduce risk and all that sort of stuff. I want to create a multiplier.
Last question. What are the current tech trends in Brazil and in Taiwan?
Well, I'm not a specialist on that, but I believe the trends are kind of the same that you guys can see in the valley, but with a delay. Sometimes the delay is short, sometimes the delay is longer. Maybe if you guys are talking about blockchain a lot in Silicon Valley, you pass a few months or maybe a year after that, and they're going to talk about the same things in Brazil and other countries, but with a short or a longer delay depending on the subject. But I believe the trends in tech, they tend to be almost the same. I don't know how it's in Taiwan, if there's anything different.
Yeah, I mean, in recent 2 years, I mostly stay here, so I learned from the news. Luckily, I was back to Taiwan like 2 weeks ago, and as I heard, there are lots of AI going on, of course, where like any place in the world don't have AI, no. They're all in AI, but in particular, I think Taiwanese industry, they are more into the like AI application in specific sector from the industrial needs. Therefore, there's a strong demand from that side, because we believe, I think AI it's not only a software, it's like a changing the culture within the organization, enterprise. They should change their ways to work on either their products or the service. So I think the implementation takes some time, and of course lots of like infrastructure need to be upgraded to the like current stage. Come on, this is almost 2020. So besides that, I also observed there are some like fintech activities going on, and the payment system. It's kind of weird. Like after the globalization, now it's again like localizations. It's always like back and forth, and how you can make best use of your core competence from the country point of view, but also you wanted to work with others to bring like the best economy together.
Yes, Yap. What are the tech trends in Silicon Valley?
So I'm going to answer this with an asterisk, because by the time something is a trend, we used to say, by the time you hear IDC or Gartner talk about it, you're too late. So if I sit here and tell you about a trend, then it's already happened. You know, and I've seen this valley reinvent itself. I'm old enough to have seen it reinvent itself from you know, the emergence of client server to, you know, the boom in autonomous driving, the whole sharing economy. There's always a big wave of something, and then the wave passes, and you ask yourself, you know, yeah, I remember that. The whole valley was red hot on that stuff, and now it's not anymore. So there's two things I think are almost inevitable. The first one is we see a few industries that are kind of like where insurance was 2 or 3 years ago. Right now, the insurance industry is red hot in the startup ecosystem, you know, the whole InsurTech thing. And that's because a few years ago it all came together with, you know, IoT, and then some you know, they finally had enough digital transformation that they can do. So this combination of behavior modification and risk assessment based on all the data that they started having. And so all of a sudden the insurance industry went from a sleepy, boring industry to a red hot tech ecosystem. And I think the same thing is starting to happen in logistics and supply chain, and it's starting to happen in healthcare, and it's starting to happen in energy, where, you know, we've been investing in digital technologies for 40 or 50 years, and finally they're starting to take advantage. But they're incredibly complex and conservative industries and applications. And So it's going to be slow going, but it'll hit you when it hits you. There's one trend I'm hoping for, and that is that startups stop being fashionable. It drives me nuts when somebody takes a warehouse and throws some beanbag chairs in it and paints the walls orange and put in a good coffee machine and says, now, we're an incubator. You know, and you see them everywhere. I was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is a dead steel town, and there were 4 startup incubators in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and they all looked alike. You know, had green and orange and yellow bean bags, and they had a slide, and, you know, and everybody looked the same, and they had inspirational phrases painted on the wall. And that was somehow, it was like a movie script. If you do this, you'll be successful as a startup. It's kind of like this new thing that it's like, instead of, you know, when we were young, we wanted to be in a band. That's how you got girls, you know? That was the cool thing. And today, you got to be in a startup, and that's the cool thing. And a lot of them, it's a little bit like just before the dot-com bust. You know, everybody from all over wanted to go do a dot-com company. And then, phew, the air was let out, and what was left was the ones that actually drove the real transformation that came from the whole internet ecosystem, and everything else went out of business. And I think we're set up for a similar thing. All over the world, you see this red-hot startup thing, and I think it's about to go bust. You know, where it's not going to be cool anymore, or people realize they're not actually making any money. And I think that we're due for that cleanup, and I think it'll be a good thing. And I hope it doesn't, in the process, also stop people from being entrepreneurial and realize that what this is about building new companies, not just about sitting on a cool beanbag chair and sipping your latte. You know, so that's a trend I'm hoping for.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for sharing your insights. I appreciate everybody for listening. Now, without further ado, I would love to introduce my colleague Andrew, who will be announcing the real stars of tonight, which are our startups. So, Andrew, please come up.